Anger is one of the most powerful emotions we can feel. It has the potential to overtake us, cloud our judgment, and lead us down paths we might regret. In those moments when our temper flares, we often find ourselves trapped in a cycle where our emotions control us instead of the other way around. But imagine for a moment if you could break free from this cycle. If you could let go of that burning anger, not by suppressing it, but by understanding and transforming it. That's exactly what Stoicism offers, a way to regain control, to respond with clarity and composure, regardless of what life throws at you. It all begins with understanding that anger, like any emotion, is not inherently good or bad. It's a response to an event, a reflection of how we interpret the world around us. According to the Stoics, it's not the event itself that causes us to feel angry, but our judgments about that event. If you think about it, the world isn't a predictable place. People act in ways that often don't align with our expectations. Traffic jams, rude comments, misunderstandings, they all trigger reactions within us. But, and here's the key, those reactions are born not from the situation itself, but from the meaning we give it. Take a moment to think about something that made you angry recently. Did the event actually cause your anger? Or was it the story you told yourself about that event? The Stoics would argue it's the latter. Epictetus said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the view which they take of them." That means every time you get angry, you're actually making a choice. You're choosing how to interpret the situation. The more we recognize this, the more power we regain. Anger only controls us if we let it. Now let's consider how to begin breaking free from this control. One of the first things Stoicism teaches us is to examine our beliefs. Why are you angry? What are you expecting from the world or from others that isn't being fulfilled? Often our anger arises from an unmet expectation, whether it's a person cutting us off in traffic or someone treating us unfairly. We expect certain things to happen, and when they don't, frustration arises. But in reality, there's no guarantee that life will go the way we want. The Stoics tell us that the key to freedom lies in adjusting our expectations to match reality, not the other way around. Think about it. When you're angry, you're holding on to an idealized version of how things should be. But the world doesn't operate based on your personal expectations. We are often caught up in the belief that things should go our way, and when they don't, we feel violated, disrespected, or wronged. But here's the catch. Expecting the world to cater to your personal desires is what sets you up for disappointment in the first place. The Stoics remind us what upsets people is not things themselves, but their judgments about things. What if, instead of expecting perfection, we started to expect imperfection? What if we could learn to accept the unpredictability of life and see challenges and obstacles as opportunities for growth rather than injustices to be angry about? Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic emperors, reminds us, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, the very thing that triggers your anger could be the very thing that helps you evolve and strengthen your character. Now let's talk about a powerful Stoic practice, separating what's within our control from what's outside of it. One of the fundamental principles of Stoicism is that we can only control our actions and reactions, not the external world. If you're angry because of something someone else did, remember, you can't control their behavior. You can't control the traffic or the weather. You can't control how others speak to you or treat you. But you can control how you respond. By shifting your focus from what you can't control to what you can, your own thoughts and actions, you instantly take away the power that external events have over your emotions. This takes practice, but it's incredibly liberating. The next time you feel that surge of anger, stop and ask yourself, is this something I can control? Can I change the actions of the person who has upset me? Can I change the circumstances I'm facing? More often than not, the answer is no. Once you accept that reality, you stop fighting against the world, and the anger loses its grip on you. You choose instead to focus on your reaction and how you can handle the situation with dignity, calm, and clarity. Another powerful tool the Stoics offer is the practice of reflection. This is about taking a step back and observing your emotions as they arise, rather than reacting impulsively. When you feel anger bubbling up, pause. Don't act immediately. Take a deep breath and examine what's going on inside. What is it that's really bothering you? Is it your pride, your fear, your sense of injustice? Most of the time, our anger isn't about the situation at hand, but about something deeper, something in our own hearts that we need to address. The Stoics call this self-examination, and it's a key part of personal growth. By regularly checking in with ourselves, we begin to see the root causes of our anger and can work to resolve them. One of the most profound Stoic practices is to constantly remind yourself of the impermanence of life. Things will not stay the same. People will come and go, and circumstances will shift. Anger often arises when we cling to a fixed idea of how things should be, when in reality, change is the only constant. By embracing this idea, you'll find it much easier to let go of petty grievances because you know they're just passing moments in the grand scheme of things. When you're able to step back and see your anger as just another fleeting emotion, it loses its power. Furthermore, it helps to cultivate a mindset of gratitude. This doesn't mean ignoring your pain or pretending everything is fine when it's not. But by focusing on what's good in your life, you start to shift your perspective. You begin to realize that there are more important things than the small frustrations that tend to provoke anger. As the Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. When we step outside of our anger and remember all the blessings in our lives, our problems shrink in comparison. We stop reacting to the world from a place of scarcity and start responding from a place of abundance. Let's talk about forgiveness. This might be one of the hardest things to practice when we're angry, but it's also one of the most freeing. Holding on to anger is like carrying a weight around with you, and the longer you hold on to it, the heavier it becomes. But when you forgive, not for the other person's sake, but for your own, you release yourself from that burden. You stop allowing that person or situation to have control over your peace of mind. As Marcus Aurelius said, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injustice. By letting go of anger, you give yourself the gift of inner peace. You free yourself from the chains that bind you to negative emotions and reclaim your ability to act with virtue and wisdom. Instead of reacting in a way that escalates the conflict, you begin to respond with patience, understanding, and emotional resilience. This is the path to freedom. The freedom to live without the weight of anger. The freedom to act in a way that reflects your highest values. And the freedom to move through life with calm, dignity, and grace. So when you find yourself on the edge of anger again, remember, it's not about what happens to you, but how you choose to respond. And every time you choose to respond with wisdom instead of anger, you take another step toward breaking free from its grip. Anger can often feel like an immediate, almost involuntary reaction, especially when we're confronted with things that go against our will. We might feel as if we have no choice but to react in anger, as though it's a natural response to feeling wronged or hurt. But the Stoics challenge us to look deeper and recognize that, while anger may be a natural feeling, how we choose to act upon it is entirely within our control. This is one of the most powerful lessons Stoicism offers: the difference between feeling an emotion and letting it control our actions. Think of how quickly anger can arise. Something happens that we perceive as unjust, and in that instant, we feel an intense rush of emotion. It might be the cutting remark of a colleague, a disrespectful comment from a friend, or an unexpected setback. Anger can feel like a fire that's sparked by a single moment. But what the Stoics teach us is that we don't have to fan that fire. Just like a fire can be extinguished with a bucket of water, anger can be quelled with deliberate reflection and restraint. But here's the catch: the moment we let anger rule us, we lose sight of our own autonomy. We forget that we have the ability to choose our response. and instead we become slaves to that emotion. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, encourages us to remind ourselves of the power we have over our own thoughts. He writes, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." In other words, by choosing to think differently about the situation at hand, you are able to change how you feel. This is the essence of Stoic practice, not allowing yourself to be carried away by the current of emotion, but rather standing firm, like a rock in the river, able to weather the storm without being swept away. One of the most effective Stoic practices to break free from anger is the art of premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. This may sound dark at first, but it's actually a profound tool for cultivating resilience. Essentially, it means imagining the worst-case scenarios in advance. By mentally preparing yourself for challenges, you lessen their power when they inevitably arise. Imagine, for example, that you're heading into a stressful situation, perhaps a heated conversation with a family member or an unavoidable conflict at work. Instead of reacting in anger, you take a moment to reflect on the fact that this scenario might not go the way you want it to. What might this person say or do? How might it make you feel? Now picture yourself remaining calm, composed, and understanding in that very moment. When you practice premeditating possible obstacles and negative events, you give yourself the opportunity to rehearse your response. By training yourself to expect challenges and respond with stoic calm, you build the mental muscles necessary to overcome emotional impulses. When the moment comes, you are ready, not caught off guard, but prepared to respond with virtue rather than anger. Another technique for breaking free from anger is to remember the larger picture. Anger often arises from a narrow focus on our immediate discomfort, but Stoicism encourages us to broaden our perspective. When you feel anger bubbling up, ask yourself, is this really worth my time and energy? In the grand scheme of things, how significant is this moment of frustration? By stepping back and looking at the broader context, you might realize that what seemed like a major injustice is actually a fleeting inconvenience or even a learning opportunity. This broader view can be further enhanced by recalling the idea of the unity of the cosmos. The Stoics believed that everything in the universe is interconnected, and each person plays a role in that larger picture. When someone wrongs you, the Stoics would advise considering that person's perspective. Perhaps they're having a bad day, or they're reacting to something you don't even know about. Maybe they are struggling with their own frustrations, and in that moment, you've simply become the outlet for their anger or stress. When you begin to see the humanity in others, when you realize that everyone is fighting their own battles, it becomes easier to let go of the resentment and frustration you might feel in response to their actions. What's also essential here is the practice of empathy. Stoicism doesn't suggest that we become indifferent to others' wrongs or that we suppress our feelings. Rather, it teaches us to approach difficult emotions with wisdom, recognizing that everyone is imperfect and that we too make mistakes helps us develop a compassionate response. Instead of lashing out in anger, we can choose to approach the situation with understanding. You can still address the issue, but instead of reacting with emotional heat, you act with calmness, asking yourself, how can I express myself in a way that leads to resolution, not further conflict? One of the key themes in Stoicism is the idea of living in accordance with nature. This concept extends beyond just our relationship with the external world. It also applies to how we manage our internal emotions. When we accept that anger, like all emotions, is part of the human experience, we can begin to see it not as something to avoid or suppress, but as something to understand. Anger, when left unchecked, can be destructive, but when used wisely, it can also serve as a signal, a reminder that something is out of alignment with our values or expectations. By observing that anger without judgment, we can begin to understand what it is telling us and make a more measured response. One powerful Stoic quote that speaks to this is by Epictetus, who said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This might sound simple, but it holds the key to breaking free from anger. When you shift your focus from external events to your internal response, you regain your power. You become less reactive and more proactive. Instead of letting the world dictate your mood, you dictate how you engage with the world. You choose to respond with thoughtfulness, patience, and wisdom. There's also great power in silence. When anger arises, instead of immediately reacting, take a moment to pause. This is something that the Stoics practiced regularly, taking a breath before responding. In moments of anger, we tend to speak impulsively, often saying things we don't mean or regret later. By taking that brief moment of silence, you give yourself the space to choose a more measured, calm response. This simple pause can be the difference between a destructive outburst and a thoughtful, composed reaction. One of the most transformative Stoic practices is to regularly remind yourself of your own mortality. This is a practice known as memento mori, or remember that you will die. By reflecting on the fleeting nature of life, we begin to realize how trivial many of the things we get angry about really are. Does it really matter if someone cuts you off in traffic or if someone speaks harshly to you? In the grand scope of your life, these moments are tiny blips. They come and go in an instant. When you accept your mortality, you realize that holding on to anger is a waste of precious time, a distraction from what really matters. You can't afford to waste your life clinging to temporary frustrations. By regularly practicing all of these Stoic tools, understanding the nature of anger, controlling your response, empathizing with others, gaining perspective, and reflecting on your own mortality, you will begin to break free from the grip of anger. Over time, this will become second nature. You'll find that you're able to face difficult situations with greater ease, knowing that no matter what happens, you can always control how you choose to respond. And in that response, you have the power to transform the situation, not with anger, but with wisdom, patience, and resilience. That is true freedom. When you look deeper into the nature of anger, you begin to realize that it often stems from a sense of injustice, an internal feeling that something is wrong, that something should be different than it is. The Stoic approach to this is strikingly simple. Accept things as they are. The world doesn't owe you fairness, and life doesn't always unfold according to your expectations. People will disappoint you, situations will frustrate you, and things will go wrong in ways you couldn't have anticipated. And while it's natural to feel upset when that happens, the Stoics teach us that our sense of justice shouldn't be tied to how the world behaves. Justice, in the Stoic sense, is about understanding our role in the world and acting with virtue, regardless of how others act. Seneca, a Stoic philosopher, offered profound insight when he wrote, "Anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it." In other words, when we let anger take over, we become our own worst enemies. The harm is not in the original event, but in how we react to it. Our anger makes us blind to the rational response and leads us to say and do things that hurt ourselves and others. The more we hold on to anger, the more it poisons us. And yet, as Stoics, we are called to understand that harm is a choice. We can choose to be hurt by external events, or we can choose to remain undisturbed by them. One of the keys to this mindset is realizing that we can control how we interpret events. If we see someone's harsh words or thoughtless actions as a personal attack, we will naturally feel anger. But if we interpret those same actions as a reflection of that person's own struggles, fears, or ignorance, we can respond with understanding instead of anger. This shift in perspective can be incredibly freeing, because it takes the focus off us and our wounded pride and places it on the other person's humanity. When we realize that everyone has their own battles to fight, we become less likely to take things personally. This idea is deeply embedded in Stoic thought. Marcus Aurelius, who himself ruled an empire while practicing Stoicism, often reminded himself in his personal notes that every person he encountered had their own struggles and flaws. He wrote, "Whenever you are about to find fault with someone, ask yourself the following question: what fault of mine most nearly resembles the one I am about to criticize?" This self-reflection allows you to take a step back and see that in the grand scheme of things, everyone is imperfect, and you are no exception. The Stoics don't expect us to be perfect, and they don't expect others to be perfect either. Instead, they challenge us to respond with patience, kindness, and understanding. Another powerful practice to help break free from anger is cultivating the virtue of apatheia, a state of inner peace where we are not disturbed by external events. This is not the same as indifference or apathy toward the world. Rather, it's an understanding that our peace comes not from the world behaving the way we want it to, but from our ability to maintain composure in the face of life's challenges. Apatheia is a state of emotional freedom, where we are no longer controlled by fleeting emotions. In the face of adversity, we remain calm, centered, and focused on what we can control: our thoughts, our actions, and our responses. One of the most transformative aspects of this practice is the recognition that anger often arises from a sense of attachment. Attachment to our ego, to our desires, to our expectations. We feel angry when the world doesn't meet our needs, when people don't treat us the way we think we deserve to be treated. But the Stoics encourage us to question these attachments. What would it look like if we were less attached to getting what we want? What if we could learn to let go of our need for external validation, our need for life to unfold exactly how we imagine it? The less attached we are, the less room there is for anger to take root. This detachment doesn't mean we become passive or disengaged from life. It simply means that we free ourselves from the need to control everything. Life, after all, is unpredictable. People are unpredictable. The world operates on its own terms. By relinquishing the expectation that things should go our way, we open ourselves to the possibility of experiencing life as it is, without the emotional burden of anger. Instead of clinging to our desires, we embrace what comes with equanimity and grace. But there's a deeper layer to this process of detachment. It's not just about letting go of expectations, but about practicing gratitude for what we already have. When we're focused on what's wrong, we're blind to what's going right. Our anger often arises from a sense of lack. Something is missing, something should be different. But the Stoics encourage us to take a moment to reflect on all the things we have to be grateful for. The very fact that you're alive, that you have the opportunity to learn and grow, that you have the power to choose how you respond to challenges. These are all gifts. The more we focus on gratitude, the less we are likely to be consumed by anger. Gratitude shifts our attention from what's wrong to what's right in our lives. There's also a very practical aspect of Stoicism that can help break free from anger: the practice of voluntary discomfort. This may seem counterintuitive, but it's an incredibly effective way to build resilience and reduce emotional reactivity. Voluntary discomfort is about intentionally exposing yourself to difficult situations that are outside of your comfort zone, without reacting with anger or frustration. It might mean enduring a cold shower, fasting for a day, or putting yourself in situations where you're not in control. By regularly practicing discomfort, you develop the mental toughness to handle situations that might otherwise trigger anger. You teach yourself that you can handle challenges with grace and resilience without needing to resort to emotional outbursts. Imagine if, instead of becoming frustrated the next time something doesn't go your way, you saw it as an opportunity to practice your Stoic skills. Every frustrating moment is a chance to strengthen your character, to remind yourself that you have the power to choose your response. This mindset turns every challenge into an opportunity for growth. The Stoics believed that we don't grow in comfort, we grow through hardship. So when you face a situation that makes you angry, ask yourself, how can I use this moment to practice Stoic virtues like patience, tolerance, and self-control? Stoicism also teaches us the importance of perspective. When you feel anger rising, take a moment to zoom out. Think about the bigger picture. Is this one moment really worth your emotional energy? Consider how insignificant it might be in the context of your whole life. This practice of perspective helps you break free from the immediacy of anger and see things more rationally. It's like stepping back from a painting and seeing the full canvas instead of focusing on one small detail. When you see life from a broader perspective, it becomes easier to let go of petty frustrations and maintain a sense of calm. Remember that anger often comes from a place of fear. Fear of loss, fear of being disrespected, fear of being wronged. The Stoics teach us that fear is often a result of our attachment to things outside of our control. We fear losing something we don't have control over, like our reputation or our comfort. But by practicing amor fati, the love of fate, we learn to embrace everything that happens to us, good or bad, as part of the natural order. We stop fearing what we can't control and begin to see challenges as opportunities to grow, rather than threats to our peace of mind. When you embrace amor fati, you stop seeing obstacles as enemies and begin to see them as teachers. Anger begins to dissipate because you are no longer fighting against the flow of life. Instead of resisting what is, you accept it, knowing that everything that happens is an opportunity for growth, learning, and practice. In the end, breaking free from anger doesn't mean suppressing it or pretending it doesn't exist. It means understanding it, choosing a different response, and using it as a tool for growth. Every time you choose to respond to a frustrating situation with wisdom, patience, and composure, you take a step closer to true freedom. The freedom to live without being ruled by emotions, the freedom to act in alignment with your highest values, and the freedom to be at peace, no matter what life throws your way. As we've explored, breaking free from anger is not about denying our emotions or pretending that challenges and frustrations don't exist. Instead, it's about transforming our relationship with anger. The Stoic path teaches us that we don't have to be ruled by our emotions. By practicing awareness, reflection, and conscious choice in how we respond to life's inevitable obstacles, we reclaim our power. Anger may still arise, but it no longer controls us. We control how we choose to react. Through techniques like premeditatio malorum, practicing gratitude, developing empathy, and embracing voluntary discomfort, we can build a more resilient, peaceful mindset. Remember, this journey isn't about perfection. No one expects you to never feel anger. But with each step you take toward mastering your response, you become more aligned with the Stoic virtues of wisdom, self-control, and equanimity. You'll find that life becomes more manageable, more peaceful, and ultimately, more meaningful. When you shift your focus from trying to change the world around you to mastering yourself, you discover an inner calm that nothing in the external world can disturb. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit that like button and share it with someone who could benefit from these Stoic insights. By sharing, you're helping others break free from the chains of anger and find peace in their own lives. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more content that can help you live a more intentional and peaceful life. Together, let's continue to build a community focused on growth, resilience, and mastering the mind. Thank you for watching, and remember, the power to choose your response is always in your hands. Keep practicing, keep growing, and keep striving for that inner peace. See you in the next one.